Good morning. I'm Sheriff Elias Diggins. I wanted to give a briefing this morning regarding an event that happened yesterday. 30-year-old Jerrol Jones utilized information from another inmate to manipulate our protocols and escape yesterday afternoon. This is an open, active investigation. We have limited information, and at this time, no additional details can be provided. In regards to our response internally, for our staff, we have made sure that our practices and protocols shall be followed. Again, due to this being an open investigation, I cannot discuss the process that Mr. Jones utilized to manipulate our release protocols. We do have 5 separate teams who are working together in the search for Mr. Jones, and bringing him back into custody is a top priority for our department as well as those other law enforcement partners that we are working with. I have a message for Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, please turn yourself in for the safety of our community. We also want to ask if anyone knows Mr. Jones's whereabouts, that they contact Crime Stoppers and share that information. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up for questions.
Do you know what he was last seen wearing?
He was last seen wearing the same clothes that you see in this picture, to include a black and gray hooded shirt as well as a white t-shirt.
Can you tell us about his history? You said probation violation. What's his criminal history?
He was being held on 2 probation violations, one for weapons charges, the other for possession of drugs.
Can you be more specific about the weapons charges?
We don't have any detail for that, Rob. It will be included in his probation file, but he was being held for a probation violation related to weapons charges.
Presumably something went wrong internally. Even if he had someone else's info, you guys are supposed to check with Social Security and fingerprints, correct?
We do, as a part of our release process, check personal identifiers, including photos. But again, based on the current investigation and the limited information we have thus far, we're not able to comment beyond that.
Can you say if you guys ran a fingerprint check on him?
Again, Rob, what I can tell you is that this is a very new and active investigation.
Will you be looking to change any protocols as a result of what happened?
We will absolutely do a review based on this incident to ensure that our protocols are as sound as they should be.
Given his history of weapons violations, are you concerned that he may be armed now?
We do have information from our local community partners as well as federal law enforcement officers that Mr. Jones should be considered armed and dangerous. We don't have any specific information related to him being a danger to anyone specifically, but we do know, based on the information from our local as well as federal partners, that Mr. Jones should be considered armed and dangerous.
I believe this is your first official day as sheriff. How does it feel kind of inheriting this on day 1?
It feels like being the sheriff is serious business, and thank you for asking that question. I want to give kudos to Director Robinson, as well as Chief Payson and our other federal partners for the support that they provided, as well as our staff. Everyone came together to support me as the sheriff as we began to address our response to this, and we'll be making sure that this is done swiftly and that justice will happen.
You mentioned you have 5 teams. Are those all Denver Sheriff teams, or will you also be enlisting help from the U.S. Marshals?
We're enlisting help from other partners outside of the Denver Sheriff's Department.
Can you specify what agencies will be assisting?
I cannot, but I can tell you they are local as well as federal partners.
Have you guys gotten tips since yesterday?
We are beginning to work through information that we are receiving and are actively looking for Mr. Jones at this time.
Has he been a previous tenant of the jail, so to speak?
I believe that Mr. Jones has been in our custody previously. Currently, that inmate, I believe, is still in our custody, and he has been interviewed by the Denver Police Department.
And I'm assuming that was an inmate who was eligible to be released. Is he supposed to be released soon or shortly?
Again, Rob, that's a part of the active ongoing investigation, and we can provide further details when we have them.
Are there parts of Colorado or any other neighboring states or anything you guys think you could be headed towards?
Again, ma'am, we're not able to provide that information as we actively look for Mr. Jones. We want to make sure that we are doing so with keeping that information relatively close to breast to ensure that we bring him back into custody.
You mentioned that he manipulated the system by using input from another inmate. Is it fair to presume that this is an inmate who is supposed to be released legitimately and he used that person's input to get out?
That would be correct.
So why is that person still in custody then?
Well, Rob, as we begin to work through this investigation, there are a lot of moving parts, and we want to make sure that we do our due diligence to ensure that we know how this happened, why this happened, before we move forward.
Do you believe the inmate voluntarily helped this Jerrol Jones get out, or that he was tricked into providing the information?
Again, Rob, we don't have that information. It's a part of the current investigation. Director Robinson, did you have some words, sir?
Hi, everyone. Murphy Robinson, Director of Public Safety. I think it's important to note that this is less than 24 hours old. And the reason we're before you here today is because we believe in transparency, but also it's important to make sure the public knows kind of what we're facing here. Mr. Jones really manipulated our system. And it's important to note that we will make changes to make sure that this can't happen again. But it's also important to note that we're doing everything possible to make sure that this former inmate, the person who manipulated our system, gets back in custody. We take this very seriously. This is not something that comes to us lightly, but it's also important to note that we have a very, very good team working on bringing Mr. Jones back into custody, and I hope and pray that that'll happen soon. And Mr. Jones, again, as Sheriff Diggins said, we encourage you to turn yourself in, and so that no one will be harmed, as well as that you can help us understand why you committed this act.
Sheriff, in order to give us the exact time that he walked out?
Sure.
We believe he walked out yesterday afternoon around 1 o'clock when the other person was scheduled to be released.
And at what point did you guys realize the mistake?
Again, Rob, that's a part of our investigation process, so we'll have to hold that information at the current time.
And are you hopeful to be able to release surveillance video from walking out sometime later today?
I'm not sure. We'll work with our media folks, Daria Cerna and Kelly Christensen, to work through that information. What I will tell you, Rob, is that we acted very promptly and swiftly to begin to look into this. Once we did receive the information, it is the top priority for the Denver Sheriff's Department today, on my first day. Any other questions? Thank you all for joining us. Again, Mr. Jones, as I and Director Robinson have said, we encourage you to turn yourself in. Thank you.